Hey everyone, this is Captain Chris from the Speckled Truth. Today we're going to talk about the Megabass Dark Sleeper and how it relates to targeting bigger fish and heavy structure. Stay tuned. So what is the Megabass Dark Sleeper? What it is pretty simple. Honestly, it's a really small profile, pre-rigged swim bait made by Megabass. It comes in a couple of different lengths and a couple of different weights. The one that I've found most effective here in Texas, especially transitioning from fresh to saltwater, targeting bigger fish, is the 3-inch, and it comes in a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce. We'll talk a little bit more about the fishability here in a sec, but the thing about it and what kind of separates it from traditional swim baits is, and this is here's a Egret Mambo mullet. As you can see, it has the top hook style as well as this 4-inch Storm shad. The difference though is that even though it's a top hook style swim bait, the hook is actually hidden behind these two really pronounced dorsal fins or weed guards. And so it allows you to fish structure much more efficiently and much more effectively. And that can be big, especially here in the Texas coast or really across the coast when you're targeting bigger fish in certain types of structure sets, rocks and grass. And so it affords you that capability to fish confidently, to fish effectively and efficiently in all those different situations. Another pro with the Dark Sleeper is the compact nature of the bait itself. So again, it's only a little 3-inch and it comes in those two different weights, but I really like the compact nature, which means you can cast it. The castability is actually really, really good despite wind conditions or whether you throw it on a spin cast or a bait cast. So it gives you the castability because it is so compact in nature. Additionally, it's the weight, right? So it's a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce weight, but they don't fish that way. The fishability of the two weights, I would equate the 3/8 ounce almost to like an 1/8 ounce if you're fishing a traditional 1/8 ounce jig head and soft plastic. And the 1/2 ounce would be almost like a 1/4 or a 3/16 ounce traditional, again, jig head and soft plastic. So the castability gives you that with the weight of the actual bait itself and the compact nature of it. But the fishability of it is that it's still light enough to cover those shallower water situations by not having the bait descend through the water column so fast. So again, the 3/8 ounce Dark Sleeper would equate to like fishing an 1/8 ounce jig and soft plastic, and the 1/2 ounce would be almost like a 1/4 or a 3/16 ounce depending on tide, wind, etc. Another thing I like about it is the actual profile of the bait. There's so much depth with the actual pronounced dorsal fin that it gives you similar profile as it's descending through the column of like your Softing XLs or your Fat Boys. As you can see, I mean, even though it's a smaller bait, it still gives you that depth. On your traditional soft plastics, a little bit bigger, right? A little bit more pronounced. So your Slayer Ink SST, a little bit more slender profile, but still as it's descending through the column, you get that profile of a much larger fin fish. In addition, I really think, and so this bait was designed to fish those clear water, smallmouth lakes in the north, fishing around rock, fishing around structure, and giving you that jig capability without fear of getting hung up. And so I think the translation to the saltwater is this looks just like a croaker, right? So this bait, really, although it's kind of a goby imitation bait to some extent, if you took away and had, and again, you got to think of in saltwater, we have much more turbid waters, meaning there's more sediment, and so the water's just not as clear as you would see in those northern tier lakes. And so by that virtue alone, that fish is feeding off of profile instead of an actual, such a vivid photo of the actual bait fish itself. And so this bait, as it's descending through the column as you're fishing it, it gives a great, I mean, a really, really good imitation of like a small fin fish, small mullet. The last thing I really like about the bait is the actual descent of the bait itself coming through the water column. It's front led, so the weight is right underneath the chin of the bait. And so as a result, as it's descending, it has a really nice glide to it, as you can see in the actual pool footage itself. And that also encapsulates how you want to fish it, right? With your rod tip up, basically making a couple pronounced pops and then letting that bait descend. And as it's descending, that little tail is kicking, and it has a great glide path as it descends through the column. That's probably why fish is so light to begin with. So when is this bait most effective? In all transparency, I haven't fished in an entire year yet just because it is such a pretty new bait, but I have fished it since really about the middle part of January. And what I've found is the more we got into spring, the more effective it got. And I have a couple theories behind that. The first is really that the spawn's kind of happening. Fish are obviously just generally more aggressive and are wanting to eat more and get quicker meals in terms of quicker energy. And as a result, this kind of fits the mold because it's accessible, it's there, and fish are feeding and they're wanting to eat something that has just generally more movement. That said, in the spring, another thing happens is that a lot of fish and a lot of smaller fish are now present in the actual estuary itself. And so this is kind of matching the hatch, right, so to speak, of just being more present and more available. In this particular video, my dad and I were fishing. It was a kind of, as you can see, is a bluebird sky day. And we found some fish that were really isolated on some really heavy structure, rock in particular. And those fish were just wanting that bait in a certain particular presentation, but we were able to fish it again confidently and effectively without fear of getting that bait hung and kind of spooking those fish. And the fish were really responding to. So take a look. Oh, hell yeah. So as you can see in the video, that was exactly what we're talking about. Being able to cast slightly into the wind and then bringing that bait back and fishing effectively in about 3 foot or less, right? And as that bait's descending, that's when that bite happened. The last thing I want to point out, which was really, it could go unnoticed, and that's something that I've found fishing with these baits, is that every hook, almost every time you hook a fish, and the hookup ratio is fantastic, by the way, because the hook isn't buried, it is exposed, even though it does have those guards. But what you found is every fish that is hooked is typically inside the mouth, on the side of the mouth, or in the cheek is what I call it. And so the hookup to land ratio is actually really high when fishing with these baits. So again, another pro. So let's wrap this puppy up, right? We talked about the Megabass Dark Sleeper and how it transcends from the freshwater world over to the saltwater. And hopefully you just consider not necessarily just this particular bait, but in general, right? Fishing, lures, and their capabilities, and in having the confidence in your technique, having the confidence to read the water and understand the fish and how they're posturing themselves. Applying these techniques, even something as small as just having a hook that is guarded, allows you to fish more confidently and again more efficiently in structure that you would be more fearful of fishing because you're not wanting to get hung up. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, obviously like and share, and then subscribe to the page if you can. And we really appreciate it. So we're going to do more of these as we continue to go through our fishing series and build this up over the course of our time in YouTube. And so we, again, thank you for all the support that you provided to us out there for Speckled Truth in general. So until next time, guys, tight lines, God bless. Always take what you need and release the rest. Take care.